Well, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex has revealed shocking details about life inside Britain's Buckingham Palace to Oprah Winfrey in a 2-hour tell-all interview. Prince Harry spoke about the rift between his father, Prince Charles, and himself, while his wife, Meghan Markle, spoke about the racism she experienced when she was expecting the couple's first child. Take a look.
During her interview with Oprah Winfrey, the Duchess of Sussex and Meghan Markle set the record straight regarding her relationship with her sister-in-law, Kate Middleton. Markle discussed the experience during her first pregnancy, revealing that there were several racist conversations about her unborn child at the time, Archie's skin color. Markle added that she began to have suicidal thoughts.
Did you hear this one about you making Kate Middleton cry?
This I heard about.
You heard about that?
That was a turning point.
Did you make Kate cry?
No. The reverse happened.
Explain to us what you mean by that.
A few days before the wedding, she was upset about something pertaining to, yes, the issue was correct, about flower girl dresses, and it made me cry, and it really hurt my feelings. So we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
And I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Prince Harry's wife has accused Buckingham Palace of perpetuating falsehoods about her and her spouse, saying they would not be silent about the experiences and treatment they received in the royal house. She was responding to a question about their reason for quitting their royal roles.
I don't know how they could expect that after all of this time, we would still just be silent if there is an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us. And if that comes with risk of losing things, I mean, there's a lot that's been lost already.
In 2020, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced that they would be stepping down as senior members of the royal family. The couple also released the news of the gender of their new baby. Markle and Harry are expecting their second child and said it is a girl.
Well, for more on the story, we're joined now by Andrew Gumbel. He's a journalist with The Guardian publication, but he joins us from Los Angeles. Andrew, good morning. It's great to have you with us here, talking to us about the story in South Africa. And for our viewers who are old enough to remember, that interview certainly has the same feeling as the 1995 interview Princess Diana, Prince Harry's mother, had. It was described at the time as causing a seismic shift in the royal family. This one is certainly comparable.
That's right. I think actually it's an even older story than that there is an unfortunate history with the Windsors, the British royal family, of dealing with undesirable women who come into the family, going back to Wallis Simpson. Very different character from Meghan, from the Duchess of Sussex, who persuaded Edward VIII, the king back in the 1930s, to marry her. He abdicated because she was a divorcee and an American. And the royal family spent the next many decades trying to keep the couple out of trouble and out of sight. Diana, obviously, a very different prospect. She was a delightfully popular, charismatic figure who threatened the royal family because she really outshone them. And I think there's a sense that something similar is carrying on now with Harry and Meghan. The fact that Meghan is the first person of color to enter the royal family, which, I don't know what they thought at the beginning. I think Harry and Meghan themselves were certainly optimistic that they could put a new modern face on a very fusty old institution. But it became rapidly clear, at least to Meghan, based on what she told Oprah in the interview, that it was a very uncomfortable position to be in. There was, quiet hostility, there was open hostility, there was an extremely aggressive, openly racist tabloid media after her. And it took a tremendous toll, not only in terms of her public standing, but also her mental health.
Yeah.
As the interview showed so clearly.
Yeah. I mean, several really shocking allegations coming from the couple. I suppose at the top of that list, as we talk about the theme of racism, is that discussion that was apparently had with Prince Harry, around the possibility of how dark his son might be.
That's right. Clearly some anxiety, and, what Oprah brilliantly managed to get out of both Meghan and Harry is the fact that it was not just a member of the household, it was a member of the family who said this, and someone whose identity would be too damaging to reveal, which suggests it's actually, a very senior member of the royal family, possibly somebody in direct line to the throne.
Yeah. Well, speaking of indirect line to the throne, will this interview be particularly damaging to someone like Prince Charles, given that, according to Buckingham Palace, or according to media reports in Britain certainly, there's been sort of a turnaround of the attitude towards Prince Charles post-Diana?
That's right. Well, I think it's a bigger frame than that. And I think the frame is that, the monarchy in Britain is an institution that's been struggling to find a role and a relevance for a very long time now. When Diana became so popular, she pointed a way forward to a more modern, less fusty, more open, more appealing monarchy. The establishment at the time decided that she was the enemy, not the future. And of course, there was that tragic car accident that ended her life very young. So we'll never know how that tension would have played out, but it was certainly in full swing for the last couple of years of her life.
Yeah.
And again, I think Meghan in particular, and Harry, because he's a very appealing young man with a lot of the attributes that his mother had, they also pointed a way forward to be more open, more diverse, more in tune with what we might think of as a 21st century vibe. And again, we're seeing the institution of the monarchy shutting that down and, by their account at least, making life so impossible for them that they had to leave because Meghan was on the verge of suicide and Harry wasn't going to stand for a repeat of the history of what happened to his mother. And, one of the most interesting parts for me of the interview, certainly in the context of thinking about countries in Africa, other parts of the world that have been in the past within the orbit of British colonial power, is that Meghan said, for the Commonwealth, as a person of color, as a biracial American, I'm a tremendous asset potentially, because I'm somebody that people of color in the Commonwealth can identify with, and 60 to 70% of the population of the Commonwealth are people who are not white. But of course, this is not the traditional attitude of the British establishment, and certainly not the colonial mindset. There is portrait after portrait in British ministries, in Buckingham Palace, of the great figure of Britannia, who is emphatically white, and having all the subjects of empire bowing down in obeisance to her. And I think that is the traditional role that the monarchy sees for itself. So the notion that someone comes along and says we need to be different, we need to be more open, we need to shed any sense that we are colonialists or racists, instead of being welcomed with open arms as a way forward for the future, is rejected as a threat.
Certainly one of the other sort of standout moments from the interview was, Prince Harry talking about how members of Parliament in the UK came out in support of Meghan Markle in terms of how she'd been treated in the press, how, racist apparently the press had been in the coverage of Meghan Markle and of the couple. He also says, there were many opportunities for the royal family to come out in some way, given the kind of coverage she'd been receiving, and that never happened. And he also talks about, Andrew, several issues, converging here. The fact that the royal family is also very wary of not getting on the bad side of the British press.
That's right. Well, that last point to me was really fascinating and something that I hadn't previously heard, but it makes perfect sense. That, as an institution, they are not necessarily ill-intentioned, let's say. But they saw what the tabloid press did, first of all, to Kate Middleton, now the Duchess of Cambridge, Prince William's wife, gunning for her before Meghan ever came along. Then when Meghan came along, had the tabloid press not only gunned for her, but as you say, used openly racist terminology to do so. I mean, in a way that is just breathtaking. That in the 21st century, any publication would go into print with the kinds of words that they did against Meghan Markle, calling her monkey-faced and, all kinds of appalling things. So, what Prince Harry was saying is that the other members of the royal family, it's not that they don't necessarily feel sympathy for Meghan coming under fire, but it's almost like, a herd of wild animals. If one of them comes under attack from a lion, they can think, well, we can either come to the rescue of our fellow animal, or we can run away from the lion. And that's the sense you get with the tabloid media, is they see Meghan, who is being mauled to pieces, and they say, we are running for the hills.
But then, sorry, yes, Andrew, I mean, you say that, and then there's the other issue of that moment that Meghan describes. It was a moment that gained a lot of traction in the British press. The fact, or the sort of rumor that Meghan Markle had made Kate Middleton cry in the run-up to the Sussex's wedding, when in fact, according to Meghan at least, the roles were actually reversed, and she was the one who was in tears. When it comes to that kind of, if her version is indeed true, I mean, that's a case of a simple statement saying, that didn't happen.
Right, and I think, she pointed to a number of instances where the palace could have come to her defense and chose not to, even when she was coming under appalling attack. And there's a history of this as well. One story about Diana that maybe people have forgotten is that she made a series of phone calls in the late 1980s that were somehow intercepted and ended up in the tabloid press. And the strong suspicion that was later substantiated by her bodyguard in a book that came out in the early 2000s is that the British Secret Service themselves recorded those phone calls and then allowed them to be broadcast in a place where amateur radio hams would be able to pick them up and then sell them to the newspapers. In other words, there is a concerted effort from within inside the establishment to undermine certain members of the royal family who are deemed to be undesirable, which, it's very hard to substantiate that kind of claim, but the very fact that there's any evidence of it is deeply shocking, and I think poses a threat ultimately to the integrity of the institution. Yeah,
I mean, ultimately we do need a response from Buckingham Palace to a whole range of things that were brought up in that interview. No statement as yet, but we're hearing that it is crafting a statement. I just wonder what it will look like.
Well, we know what happened in the week before the interview, which is that a number of people supportive of the palace's position started throwing things at Meghan and Harry, suggesting that Meghan had been, a tyrannical person to work for when she was in Britain, and that there's now going to be an investigation into possible, workplace abuse. Also suggesting that a pair of earrings she wore 3 weeks after the murder of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi were given to her by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who's the person who the U.S. intelligence services are now saying was responsible for ordering the killing, somehow to try and, cast her in a bad light. We can probably expect some kind of counterattack. And, if you see what Harry and Meghan telling Oprah as a threat to the institution of the monarchy, and I do believe that that's what it was, it is completely natural that the institution of the monarchy is going to want to defend itself and fight back.
And not want to perhaps do a bit of introspection? You don't reckon it'll go that way?
It would not be consistent with what we've seen coming out of the British royal family over a number of decades. Gore Vidal, the great American essayist who was friends with Wallace Simpson, who I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, and knew the Duke of Windsor, the former Edward VIII, quite well, he observed in the late 90s, comparing their situation to Diana's. He said that, the House of Windsor is very tough when it comes to matters of survival, and they see this as an issue of survival. If they see this as an issue of survival, they are going to do everything they can to shore up what they believe to be their own best interests. And to date, that has involved going on the attack, not being introspective and saying sorry.
Andrew, thank you so much for your perspective on the story. Andrew Gumbel is a journalist with the Guardian newspaper. He joins us from Los Angeles this morning.